I'm not going to spend a lot of time because I have to say VAT wasn't a great event in the budget. There were one or two things that, if they affect you, will affect you in a big way. But I suspect for most people it will have no impact. Steve talked about the likely increase of the standard rate of VAT. I have to say, if you look around Europe, the requirement is, as far as the standard rate is concerned, that every member state of the EU, and the 27 of them now, set their standard rate of VAT in a band which sits between 15 and 25%. So they don't have unlimited rights to change their rates. But a lot of countries have pushed the standard rates up. Most recently, Greece has increased it to 21% from 19%. So there is, if you like, form around Europe. And the only country left with a 15%, I think, is Luxembourg, which finds it quite useful because it does actually allow it to enter into a bit of tax competition on certain cross-border supplies. So possibly Luxembourg won't be looking to increase it. But like Steve, long-term, I think VAT rates are going to go up. Now, going through the events of the budget, I suppose we have what we would call the usual culprits. The first one is VAT registration thresholds. The VAT registration threshold tends to go up every year. This year is no different, and it's gone up 3%, or just under 3%, to 70,000, which I'm very grateful for, because I'm thinking I'll be able to remember 70,000 for a year rather than 68 or whatever. So I'm going to enjoy the next year while it stays at that level. I would just say two things about the VAT registration threshold, though. I mean, if your business is already registered for that, then not perhaps directly relevant. But when you look at your VAT registration status, what you have to do is consider the value of your taxable, i.e. non-exempt supplies in the UK, and also any purchases of goods from suppliers in other member states. And if you go over the £70,000 threshold in a year, or you expect to do it in a 30-day period, you become registrable for VAT. When you're looking at the turnover figure, you have to include certain services that you buy in from overseas countries. So if you buy in consultancy, you would add that to your sales figure as though you've made a sale of the same value, for example, and that's always been the case for certain services. But there were a lot of changes on the 1st of January relating to where supplies were deemed to arise, because obviously with 27 member states, you have to have a set of rules that decides where a transaction will be subject to tax. Otherwise, several lots of tax would fall due, or no tax would fall due. And these changes mean that virtually any service that a business buys from overseas is likely to be deemed to be a supply in the UK. There are exceptions. And it means that probably for any people that are taken out of the VAT registration net with the increase in the threshold, there will probably be 5, 6, 7 who are brought in. The other usual suspect is the fuel charge. If you provide road fuel to employees and there's any element of private mileage, then you're supposed to account for a fuel charge on the vehicle. I could have entertained you for a little while by reading them all out to you, but the key thing is, I think, they have changed, and they are changing for VAT returns that go in after the 1st of May. So it's something to be alert for. I said that the changes as they are occurring are likely to affect some people a lot and others not at all. Does anyone in the room have plans to buy a Learjet? Or no? Possibly then you're in the fortunate category of the next one won't affect you. But there is a zero rate that applies to aircraft, and at the moment it applies if your aircraft is over 8,000 kilograms and it's not adapted for pleasure. And there are a surprising number of them around. Now, some other member states of the EU got very upset that the UK was effectively a nice entry port for aeroplanes for wealthy people into the European Union, and complained, and as a result the European Commission took infraction proceedings against the UK. And essentially what they're doing is, in future, they won't be zero-rating aircraft based on the size of them. They will be looking to the use of them. So if you want to not pay VAT on your aircraft, you'll have to set up an airline and fly mainly international flights. Quite a big task. As far as that relief, it probably has a bigger impact if anyone's supplying services that are in that sort of industry. You know, if you're maintaining or you're supplying or handling aircraft, there are lots of related services, and when the zero rate goes from the aircraft, it also goes from those related services.